everyone, my name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we are going to be talking about another social media hot topic, and this was originally on TikTok, and I am not on TikTok for the sake of my own mental well-being, so I may have missed some stuff with this one, but it got really big. Like, it left TikTok and went to mainstream Twitter. Not kink Twitter, but people that cringe at weird things on Reddit or dating profiles or weird text messages. I found this on a very mainstream Twitter account. And when you figure out what this is about, it's probably going to horrify you. So essentially what happened is there was a trend going around on TikTok of women saying, well, I might not be the one that you marry, but when you're having sex with your boring wife in missionary position, you're gonna be thinking about me because I'm kinky. And like, I can't even get through saying that because it's so cringy. Oh my God, no, you can't say that. You can't, no, stop it. Stop it.
Stop it. Get some help.
You can't say things like that, because to me, saying that proves every negative stereotype that people have about BDSM people, because they always are so superior. They think they're better than us. And normally that's not true, but I guess for these people, they really had to go there, didn't they? But it doesn't stop there, because I dove into this. I was like, okay, is this a common thing? Is this like just people getting mad over like one post? Is this a trend? And I looked at vanilla, not vanilla, vanilla shaming, all variations of that. And the term vanilla shaming has 1 billion views on TikTok. Billion with a B. This is a hot topic as far as I am aware. And this is really interesting to me because 5-6 years ago on Instagram, we were having conversations about this very briefly. You would get, maybe a post every once in a while, someone would bring it up, and I did a video at the time talking about it, and I thought we resolved this conversation. I thought that we came to an agreement, but apparently we did not, so we got to revisit this. And so what I want to talk about is vanilla shaming, kink shaming, all of that stuff, because this definitely did go beyond just like a couple of people making a post about, well, I'm better in bed because I'm kinky. Because the response to this went way beyond just like, hey, don't do that. It was like, well, actually, I think I'm the better one because I don't need to get ran over by a car in order to get off. And it's like, you're both being so childish right now. Just stop. Neither one of you, neither groups of people here are helping move the conversation forward. So apparently I have to be the one to do that. So let's talk about the term vanilla, because as it seems to be taken on TikTok and as it seems to be used, a lot of people do mean it as an insult, as a put down of, you're boring, you're less than me, you are uninteresting. Like, there's apparently a subgenre of like vanilla girls who like their aesthetic is like French vanilla as a smell. We're not talking about them. No, they're not in this conversation. They seem lovely, but it's people that are saying like, well, like, yeah, he's so kinky in bed. Yeah, what does he do? Oh, he spanked me one time. Oh, he's actually vanilla. Like, it's people doing that kind of a thing. And let's talk about where the term vanilla comes from and what it's supposed to mean. So vanilla is supposed to be a neutral descriptor of anything, anyone, any activity that is not BDSM, that is not kinky. It is not meant to be loaded with all of this bias against those things. It is meant to be just neutral. And I think where people don't have the full picture is that there is a huge overlap between nerd culture, kink culture, and early adoption of the internet. So when people were on, all sorts of forums and things and going through email chains and all of that, even before that, the other things we had before that, you had people that were trying to come up with like words and terms for language that we didn't previously have before. They were trying to come up with, okay, how do we describe this thing that we're experiencing? What do we say? And in the tech world, the term vanilla is used to describe something that is a base, unmodified thing, like a vanilla PC or the vanilla version of Minecraft. Like, it's not a judgment, it just means that it's not modified in any way, because the concept was, okay, vanilla is the standard, it's the base, it's the social expectation, it is what normal is, if we can, use the term normal in this context. That is what life by default is supposed to be about. But kink is a deviation from that norm. Kink is a deviation from social expectations. So vanilla is the base, kink is a deviation from that. And we can argue and have a different conversation about if that's an accurate way of thinking about kink as like a deviation from something else instead of being its own thing. But that's for another time. And I will just note here that that's how I think about vanilla, right? I don't mean it as an insult to put people down. I am simply describing things that I don't believe fall under the BDSM umbrella or are not kinky because of how popular they are in the mainstream, how default they are, things along those lines. So the term vanilla is not meant to be an insult. And the idea that vanilla is bad or boring or is lesser is wild to me, because vanilla is freaking delicious, right? Vanilla cupcakes, who would say no to that? Glazed vanilla flavored donuts, yes please. Vanilla ice cream, French vanilla ice cream, so good on a hot summer day. And vanilla can also be exciting in its own way, right? You can have vanilla baked Alaska, you can have vanilla creme brulee, right? Like, you can have things that are exciting and interesting in vanilla flavors, just like you can with chocolate or strawberry or caramel or whatever else. And it doesn't lessen vanilla that some people prefer other flavors. So that's what I think about the term vanilla. But just because it's not meant to be used as an insult doesn't mean people are not using it that way. And on TikTok, it seems like the only time you get people who use the term vanilla is when it is meant in an insulting, put down kind of a way. And I think this is something that a lot of like younger, newer kinksters are prone to, or people that are not really like participating in the kink community but are like individually kinky in their relationships. They feel like, oh my gosh, I've unlocked this like really cool hidden thing, and I'm a member of like this cool secret club that like is hard to join, and look at you over there, I'm looking at you from my treehouse and you're down on the ground and I'm in this cool treehouse, and aren't I so awesome? And like, they just think about being a kinky person as being a member of like a cool secret club. And for the record, this is the exact same shit that happens in the goth community, like especially like 10 years ago on goth YouTube, people being like, goth is a music-based subculture, and if you don't like goth music, you can't be goth, and and like all that infighting, we're just doing that same thing. So it is something that a lot of people will grow out of over time, and as they get more mature in their identity as a kinkster, they realize they don't have to put people down in order to feel secure in being kinky, because especially when you're new, right, and you're figuring things out, and you're reading, you're exploring, that is a vulnerable time for your identity. And like, am I really kinky or not? Do I belong here? Am I enough? And kind of proactively putting other people down can be a way of lifting yourself up. I don't think in a good way, but it can be used for that function of, I feel more secure in my identity because I know I'm not like these other people. I know for sure I am better and more kinky than these other people. And so my own identity is more secure. And that is just, I hope that maybe over time, as kink becomes something that we can have more conversations about and people learn about earlier on in their lives and can sort of wrestle within their minds whether or not they're really kinky, earlier than their second marriage, that you will have less of a tendency to go in that direction, because if you feel more secure in your identity to start with, you're not feeling shame, you're not feeling guilt, you're less likely to put other people down, to put yourself up. But at the same time though, it's not just kinky people putting people down that's the problem in this conversation, because a large side of this is the response from like anti-kink, anti-vanilla shaming people that in response to this are then kink shaming by falsely equating kink to violent, rough sex and abuse and like being beaten by your partner. And I don't know how much of it is that they're being hyperbolic and they know kink is not all about that, or they are legitimately very confused. Because what ends up happening, and this happens with a lot of conversations on TikTok and elsewhere in social media, is you end up lumping in important conversations about like minors trying to access kink spaces with other things that are not really on the same level, right? Like talking about sexual coercion and the pressure to performatively be into kink, but then you're also putting down people and then acting like it's like you're dealing with just internalized sexism, and that's the only reason that you would be into BDSM is because you are dealing with your internalized misogyny. And it's like, no, it's complicated. Like, our interest in kink is complicated, and our society does have something to do with that. But you can't, like, piggyback conversations about minors trying to access kink spaces into, like, hey, I think kink means that you're being beaten, and that's the only way that I can think about being into BDSM stuff. Like, that's not fair, right? And I think a good example of this that happens outside of BDSM is, like, age gap discourse, right? Like, you see people that are trying to have conversations about, hey, why is this 45-year-old director dating a 19-year-old actress? Why is this Twitch streamer who's 35 dating a 20-year-old that used to be a fan? Like, maybe we should unpack that a little bit. Maybe we should analyze what's going on there and healthy relationship dynamics and how age might affect that. I have a tendency myself to be in age gap relationships and try to do them in a way that is healthier and mindful, but I also think we do need to have conversations about, like, teachers dating their ex-students. Like, yeah, that needs to be examined, but then it gets morphed into, like, this second conversation where, like, a 27-year-old on Twitter dating another random person who's 32 is seen as like a problematic age gap. Like, no, okay? Different scenarios. Why are we lumping these two things together? They seem obviously very different, and our inability to have nuance with these things really undermines our ability to move forward and have maybe a larger understanding and have solutions to these problems and help people not end up in bad coercive scenarios. And so yes, a big part of this is that problems that are legitimate actual problems are getting obfuscated by fear-mongering over these like non-issues or like very, very minor issues. And I just want to clear up the confusion here because I do not know where this is coming from, but BDSM is not the same thing as rough sex. You can be kinky, you can be dominant, and never want to slap someone, never spit on them, never hurt them, never touch them in anger. None of those things come part and parcel with BDSM. It is an umbrella term, it is an acronym, and only 2 of the 6 components of it have anything to do with pain. The rest of it, you can be a service submissive and never do anything involving pain. You can be a master and never punish your slave physically. There is no reason why BDSM has to be synonymous with rough sex or violence or pain or suffering or anything like that. There are literally hundreds. I have counted. I have made the list, so I would know. There are hundreds of different things you can do under the BDSM umbrella, and a very tiny fraction of them have anything to do with pain. And even if they do involve pain, all of it is based on consent and mutual pleasure and enjoyment. And it's not just about one-sided suffering and inflicting that on someone and trying to get away with abusing someone using like a nice veneer over it. And you know, there's complexities to this, right? Like, you can have role play that looks really dark. You can have scenes that involve consensual non-consent, but underneath all of that, the principal components of it involve that joy, mutual pleasure, consent, all parties involved wanting to be there. And I don't know how people get this picture. Maybe it's interactions they've had, maybe it's something to do with porn, maybe, I don't know. I do not know where people are getting this picture, but my interpretation of what they're saying is the idea of BDSM they have in their heads is a poor, suffering woman just crying, mascara running, curled up in a ball in a corner of her room, her clothes torn off, and just begging, no, please stop. Like, legitimately, actually miserable, begging for mercy the entire time, hating everything that's happening. And there's this, like, monstrous, evil, sociopathic person that is wailing on them and beating them and doesn't stop no matter what happens. Nothing will get the beast to slow down. The red mist will not fade away unless and until a safe word is said. We had a conversation about this in the video I recently did about safe words and that whole conversation. And it just seems like people are really stuck in this idea. And it's so sad, because if people realized the variety of things that you can do within BDSM, if they could let go of this stale, tired, inaccurate image, they might discover BDSM might be something that they're into. I know it's hard, like, to think that an anti could be into a thing that they hate, supposedly, but it does happen, BDSM is such a big umbrella of so many things that you might think BDSM is all about this horrible violence, but when you realize you can have a caregiver, somebody that praises you and helps you be a better person, you might go, oh, hey, that actually sounds kind of nice. And I hope that people that are thinking this way about kink can maybe hear a little bit and change their perspective just a tidge to realize it's more complicated than the image they've built up in their head. I should probably answer this because I don't think I have yet. Does vanilla shaming happen? Yes, it does. People get shamed for being vanilla in relationships, online. It does happen. Do I think it's a massive issue that's like a core component of the BDSM community that needs to be fixed? Not necessarily. I think it's mostly a social media problem that is created because of the nature of social media. But I do want to get back and talk about the people that were making those original TikToks that were on that trend, because like I said, everyone here sucks, everyone is being a child. And it is deeply weird to me, and I do not understand the mentality that goes into perceived control over someone's future sexuality because of how awesome you are. And you're just so good and so awesome in bed that even when it's 10, 15 years later and they're happily married, that they're gonna secretly be thinking about you and lusting after you even when they have sex with another person. Like, why is that the thing that you have in your head right now? Why is that what's important? It's deeply weird to me trying to have ownership over someone's sexuality and like trying to be better in comparison to an invisible woman that doesn't even actually exist yet. Like, why are you trying to be superior to the idea of a person who doesn't even exist? Like, what's going on there? We need to talk about some things, I think. But, I really think that if someone is getting married, if you love that person and they get married in the future, if you cared about the relationship, shouldn't you want them to be happy? Shouldn't you want them to, temporary breakup, like, I hate him, he's awful, like, feelings aside. When you get over that, shouldn't you want them to be happy? Shouldn't you want them to be compatible with their future spouse? I feel like that's part of it. And also, here's the deal. Here's the key component, everyone. Not everyone is kinky. I know that's wild. That seems, for my channel, it's everyone should be kinky, right? No. I know a lot of people who watch my videos that are not kinky in the slightest, but just think it translates into good relationship advice more generally. And I love you if you're hearing me do that. So, kink is not a universal thing where if you're kinky, you get a permanent plus 20 bonus to your sexuality score. That's not how it works. Kink is not a universal thing. There are a sizable number of people that have kink-related fantasies. At least occasional kink-related or like group interaction fantasies are very common, but most people are not kinky and do not want to do kink in the bedroom on any level. They are happy and content in their relationships, not including kink. Not every man wants to be dominant. Not every woman wants to be submissive. Not every random girl you see on a dating app wants to be your mistress secretly and would love it if they had a submissive man. It is not for everyone. And that is really important to understand, especially if you are kinky and you have a partner that you want to be in a kink dynamic with, power exchange, scenes, otherwise, you cannot make a square peg into a round peg. You cannot make a square peg fit into a round hole. You cannot make someone be something they're not. And being kinky isn't just like, oh, I had an awakening to the truth of like how to have really awesome sex. It's more than that. Like, it's not just like, oh, you figured out a cool new position. It's on some level about who a person is and what their interests are. Not every guy treats kinky sex as like the pinnacle, most sexy sex of all time. We all have our different preferences. And some people like very slow, intimate, romantic, cuddly, very warm vanilla sex. And some people like kinky, hard, cold, and rough, right? We're all gonna come with our different opinions on that. Sometimes it really seems like the grass is always greener. And I have potentially a controversial opinion about this, but is kinky sex actually really that much better than vanilla sex? Is there really a meaningful difference between the two? In my mind, not really. I think part of what makes BDSM appealing to use in this way of like, look at me, I'm cool, I'm different, I'm special, is that BDSM and kink are seen as like taboo and exciting and this novelty. And if you've only ever been presented with vanilla sex as the default, of course, you're gonna see this whole other way of doing things as being like so colossally different that like, wow, if I'm into this, look at how different I am. Look at how much cooler I am because I know again about this like the secret clubhouse that I can be a part of. And I think part of where this actually comes from is not actually any real difference in the vanilla sex and kinky sex acts as what they are by themselves, but how people approach vanilla sex versus kinky sex. Because with vanilla, it is seen as like standard and boring and default, and it's just something that you do. Maybe initially in a relationship it's more fun and exciting, but as you get more into a rote part of the relationship, you kind of fall into a rhythm, into a pattern, you get married, life takes over. It's very easy for vanilla sex to get boring, kind of, right? Like, you end up with this pattern of like, oh, you do it really quickly before bed with the lights off. You don't really talk about it. You don't really get into what you like. You don't really explore a whole lot. You do the same 2 positions. It lasts for 5 minutes and it's over and done, right? Like, it's not exciting. It's not interesting. And I think it's not because it's vanilla, because those acts in and of themselves are boring, but because the way people talk about it makes it fucking boring. The thing that makes kink exciting and interesting, what helps that happen long term, is the fact that when you do kink, it is the standard to talk about it in detail. Talk about your motivations, your likes, your dislikes, your boundaries, your limitations, your fantasies, what you've done before with other people. And oftentimes in vanilla relationships, all of that conversation is totally off limits. You do not talk about what you've done with past partners. You do not talk about what your preferences are. You do not even think about getting advice from somebody else. Oh my gosh, you were just supposed to know everything, and talking about it during the moment? Absolutely not. Kills the mood. Cannot be done. It is impossible to maintain arousal if you ask a question. That is what the mentality seems to be. And in BDSM, what we end up doing instead is we talk about everything. And that's what helps keep things going, is because you check in. And kink, this is where I get kind of controversial here, it is very possible for kink to become stale and boring and rote and mundane, right? Like, I feel like I don't remember what the name of this is. I feel like there's a documentary about like a master slave like couple that met on, was Second Life or something, and like they met up for the first time in real life and they started living together. Like, there's a film crew there, and at first it was really kinky for like a week, and then after that it just got like, regular normal life stuff started to set in. And you see that, and then you also see not just like normal life setting in, but you also see like the kink itself getting kind of mundane and routine, and like, oh, we always do the same scene, we always listen to the same music, you always tie me up in the same way. And so that also gets kind of boring and stale, and it loses that sense of taboo and novelty and excitement and intrigue. And I think in vanilla sex, people try to maintain that novelty and interest and intrigue by not talking about it, because they think, if I don't say anything and my partner doesn't know what's going to happen next and we're just kind of feeling each other in the moment, then it's always going to be interesting, right? Because we're not spoiling it before it actually happens. Whereas in kink, while surprise and playing with surprise can be really fun, we take the tact of like, okay, you want to know the broad strokes. You want to know the likes, the dislikes, the preferences, the excitements, the turn-ons. You want to have conversations about all of that. And then the actual way things happen is the surprise. Right? You're not writing out a script. You're not doing a play. You are playing. You're not doing a play. You're not, acting on a stage. And you rely more on the communication to allow you to play in kind of a wider space of possibilities. Because when you're doing kink, you have so many more options within your sandbox that you do have to talk about it more to make sure you know where the boundaries are. When you're dealing with more vanilla stuff, there are, technically, if you wrote it on a list, there would be fewer possibilities for what to do. But talking about it doesn't spoil it necessarily either. And to get back to the point about kink getting stale, I think what keeps the kink from getting stale is that ongoing communication, checking in about the relationship dynamic, checking in about rules, checking in about the scene you just did, debriefing after things, not just pillow talk where you're, looking at each other with lovey-dovey eyes and you watch a movie or something, but actually talking about what happened afterwards, what could be better, what worked, what didn't, what you want to do next time, how exciting it was, and how you want to improve things with every iteration that happens after that. And so that means when you've been in a kink relationship for 4, 5, 10 years, there is always the possibility it could get stale. But if you are going about it in the typical way of mindfully communicating about what you're doing, as your tastes and preferences change, as your partner's taste and preferences change, you can move with that. You can go, okay, well, before we kind of did mostly DDLG, but now we're feeling more like pet play. Now we're going to do more like a master-slave thing. Now we're really into impact play, needles, whatever. You can move through everything as opposed to being like, well, we're doing it this way because we've always done it this way. Or I thought you liked it when I did that. Or I thought you needed me to do that. People get in their head without communication. They get in their head about thinking, oh, well, my partner needs me to do this, or they like it when I do this. And it could just be the other person's being polite, right? Oh, I don't really like it when you do this. I'm just trying not to ruin the mood. And oh my gosh, the variations on things like that happen when you don't communicate about the sex you're having, endless. So many possibilities there with how that can go wrong and cause issues and lead to one person being secretly dissatisfied the entire time because, I'm gonna say it again, you haven't talked about it. So I think the main difference is really all about communication. And if vanilla people could just get over their hang-ups around asking and talking before and after and talking about what you want to do, you could make it more fresh and exciting. And a lot of the mainstream advice about how to, reignite in the bedroom is based in techniques about communication, right? Talking to your partner about, fantasies together, talking about past experiences that you've had, that you've enjoyed, really getting into the details on what works about your sex and what doesn't and what you would want to add. And then you can add in things that are vanilla, but also can make things more exciting, right? That people don't typically do together, right? You could read erotica together. You could watch porn. You could use sex toys. You could focus on foreplay more. You could talk about things more during the week and kind of tease each other and have physical intimacy outside of the sex. Because this is the big thing I find comes up with vanilla interactions is people are so preoccupied about getting the sex needs met that the other physical parts kind of fall by the wayside, right? I don't want to cuddle her because I haven't had sex with her, and it's not really necessarily a punishment thing, but I don't feel satisfied, so I'm not going to engage physically in a way that indicates maybe contentment or something like that. They don't want to send the wrong signals. They don't want to, reward people for bad behavior because they're not getting their sex needs met. But actually having that ongoing physical intimacy outside of just sex can really help. It can do a lot when you rub someone's shoulders or give them a foot massage or just cuddle on the couch after work and reconnect physically, so that way it doesn't seem like he only ever touches me when he wants to have sex. She only ever comes to me physically when she wants to have sex. If you expand the intimacy to other places in the relationship, vanilla, kink, or otherwise, you're probably going to get more of the situation that you want to have. And I realize that I'm kind of going off script here, and not that I have a script really, but I'm kind of getting off of the main topic here, and I really just want to talk about how you can improve a vanilla relationship without it being like kink is a solution, right? Vanilla, there's always a cap to how interesting it can be, and kink will always be more than that. Like, it kind of seems like vanilla maximum excitement and fun is like here, and kink is up here, when really I think they're more similar than we give them credit for. It's just the way that people think about and navigate these two ways of having intimate interactions. One ends up being superior in a way to another because of how we think about it socially, what the expectations are, and how we handle those expectations. And just to reiterate, right, like, kink can also be stale. Kink can also result in complacency. And so adding kink into your relationship, or just having kink in your relationship at all, is not a fix-all. It's not going to solve your relationship problems. It's not going to solve your communication problems. It requires a higher level of communication in and of itself. But if you aren't doing that, it's not going to magically make it start happening on its own. And I've joked, beforehand that sometimes when you've been into kink for so long, the kinkiest thing you can do is roleplay being like a happy married couple, and his name is Steve, and you're Janice, and you're happily married, and you have 2 kids, and you make passionate love on the weekends when you have time, and you're entering a pie contest, and you're so excited about entering your pie into the tri-state fair pie baking contest or whatever. And like, role-playing being vanilla is the kinkiest thing you can be after you've been kinky for long enough, where like you go to a dungeon and seeing somebody getting flogged or whipped is like, oh yeah, I see that every week. Like, it just becomes mundane, right? And so sometimes vanilla circles around into being kinky and vice versa as well. So in summary, at the end of all this, because I think I've found the end of this video somewhere in here, is being kinky is not better than being vanilla. Being vanilla is not better than being kinky. It is not a contest. It is not a competition. We are not here to be better than each other. That's not what it's about. It's about finding what makes you happy, what makes you fulfilled. What are things that you enjoy doing it with consent, finding partners that want to enthusiastically do things with you and be involved in that process with negotiation and talking about it beforehand, and collaboratively creating a mutually pleasurable experience. And that can happen with kink. It can happen with vanilla. You can do one thing sometimes and one thing another. You can go between them. You can be one thing for part of your life and one thing for another. It really does not matter. It's not about being better than anyone else. It's about finding what makes you happy. And I know sometimes in my videos, I can have reservations about certain terms, right? Like, I'm not a big fan of the term, pleasure dom. I haven't been the biggest fan in the past, like the term gentle dom. But really, it doesn't matter what I think, right? It's about you and your relationship. It's about what makes you happy. And if using certain labels or certain words, doing certain things makes your relationship better and feel accurate and real to you, great, do that. Do not let me hold you back, and do not put each other down for different preferences, for different things that we enjoy doing, because we only got this one life, right? Let's be happy doing it. Let's not focus on hating things and like misunderstanding things in an aggressively just completely out there way. And yeah, just focus on your own happiness. Really, that's the point. Everyone here was being silly. I think, again, they were just being silly. It was unnecessary. And I would love to know what you think about this conversation down below. Vanilla shaming? Kink shaming? Thoughts? Do you think vanilla shaming is a thing? Would you call it something else? Does another label maybe work better? How big of a problem do you think this really is? Have you interacted with vanilla shaming or kink shaming before? Let me know again in a comment down below. If you enjoyed this, if you're not already, please do subscribe, because I make videos twice a week about all sorts of kink and BDSM related topics. And finally, if you want to support what I do, the best you can do that is with Patreon. A link to that will be down below. If you do already support me there, thank you so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.